Good morning, children. This lesson is for Class 6 for the subject of biology, chapter number 2, the flower, from your textbook, Concise Biology, Selena Publications. It is being submitted to you on 17th of May 2021. Today, we are going to discuss the different agents of pollination and the process of fertilization in plants. Now, children, what is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anthers to the stigma of a flower. There are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. For cross-pollination to occur, an agent should be available to transfer the pollen grains. The four common agents for cross-pollination are insects, wind, water, and animals. Insects. Insects such as bees, butterflies visit flowers to collect nectar. In the process, pollen grains get stuck to their body parts. When they visit another flower, the pollen grains get transferred to the stigma of that flower. Flowers pollinated by insects show certain characteristics. Most flowers have brightly colored petals to attract insects. For example, rose and marigold. Most flowers produce nectar. The flowers are sweet smelling. For example, night jasmine, and the pollen grains and stigma of most of these flowers are sticky. Now, the next agent of pollination is wind. The flowers of grasses such as rice, maize are pollinated by wind. Wind pollinated flowers show the characteristics like their pollen grains are dry and light so that they can be easily blown by the wind. The pollen grains are produced in a large quantity. Since a large number of them may not reach the stigma of a flower, the style projects out and has a large feathery stigma so that the pollen grains flying in the wind can be easily received. Now, children, pollination by water occurs in aquatic plants such as hydrilla and Vallisneria. In Vallisneria, initially, the male flower is submerged in water. On maturity, it gets detached and floats on the surface of water. The female flower, which has a long stalk, also floats on the surface of water. Pollination occurs when the male flower, moving with the water current, comes in contact with the female flower and the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma. Birds, squirrels, and bats also act as agents of pollination. When these animals come in contact with the flower, the pollen grains get stuck to their body. The pollen grains get dropped off on another flower when the animal visits that flower. In such cases, the flowers are usually large, brightly colored, and grow on tall trees. Now, children, let us take a break and try to answer the following questions. 1. Name an aquatic plant pollinated by water. 2. Why do most of the flowers have brightly colored petals? 3. Why do wind-pollinated flowers have large feathery stigma? The answers are 1. Vallisneria. 2. Most of the flowers have brightly colored petals to attract insects for pollination. 3. Wind-pollinated flowers have a large feathery stigma so that the pollen grains flying in the wind can be easily received. Now, children, let us understand the fertilization in plants. Fusion of male and female sex cells or gametes is called fertilization. In plants, after a pollen grain reaches the stigma of the same kind of flower, germinates into a pollen tube. The pollen tube grows down through the style and enters the ovary to reach ovule. On reaching the ovule, pollen tube releases male cells or male gametes. The male gamete fuses with the female gamete, that is egg, in ovule and produces the zygote. The ovary now develops into a fruit and the ovule develops into seeds. The ball of ovary develops into fruit ball, sepals, petals, style and stigma fall off after fertilization. Now, children, let us discuss the formation of fruits. A fruit is a ripened ovary. A fleshy fruit consists of two parts, pericarp or fruit wall and a seed. Pericarp develops from the ovary wall. It is thick in fleshy fruits and thin in dry fruits. It has three parts, epicarp, mesocarp and endocarp. Epicarp is the outer, thin, leathery part of the fruit. Mesocarp constitutes the sweet and fleshy part, which is usually eaten. And the endocarp is the innermost hard portion that contains the seed. A fruit may be dry or fleshy. In dry fruits, the fruit wall is hard, thin, and dry. It is not distinguished into three layers. The three layers are epicarp, mesocarp, and endocarp. But in dry fruits, it is not distinguished. The edible part is seed. Plants such as gram, pea, bean, maize, and wheat produce dry fruits. They are adapted for dispersal by wind. In fleshy fruits, the fruit wall is thick and fleshy. The mesocarp is fleshy or fibrous, which is the edible part of the fruit, which forms the middle layer of the fruit. Plum, tomato, mango, orange, cherry are fleshy fruits. Fleshy fruits are an adaptation for dispersal of seeds by birds and mammals. Do you know, children, that in a walnut, the hard shell is the pericarp enclosing the edible seed, while apple, pear, strawberry are false fruits. In these, thalamus of the flower forms the fleshy part of the fruit, and ovary remains as a small part containing seeds. Now comes the functions of a fruit. A fruit protects the immature seeds from animals and extreme climatic conditions. It stores food material. Also, it attracts animals that help in dispersing or scattering the seeds to distant places. So, children, today we have discussed the different agents of pollination and how fertilization take place in plants. Thank you, children.